I swung at her with a shovel and hit her, but it didn't dissuade her, and she reached up and basically removed the center of my face.
60-year-old Nic has done the same thing every morning for as long as he can remember. He would grab his shovel at sunrise and take the short walk to irrigate his ranch, accompanied by his dog. But one day, while working, he heard his dog fighting with a raccoon. As soon as he went to check, his eyes widened in shock. It was no raccoon. It was the stuff nightmares are made of. With fangs and claws of steel, a grizzly bear launched itself to attack poor Nic. The next few minutes was a fight for life, but at a great cost. Wyoming, also known as the Cowboy State, holds a special place in the hearts of those who appreciate wide open spaces and a spirit of independence. With its iconic cowboy culture and rich history, this land has seen its fair share of legends and lore. It's a place where dreams are woven into the very fabric of existence, and where pioneers forged paths that still resonate today. But there is a darker side to this cowboy state. Hidden deep inside the wilderness and ranches of this beautiful city, the most dangerous black and grizzly bears have made their home. However, the grizzlies are more dangerous, especially when you are in their territory. As a result, there have been 34 attacks so far in the remote areas of Wyoming. Over half of those attacks have been fatal and leading to life-changing deformities if the victim survives. Rationally, everyone steers clear of the bear areas. The ferocious beasts could be lurking at every corner, watching you, waiting to attack. But for 50 whole years, Nic Patrick had been getting lucky. Every morning, he would walk to his ranch to irrigate it. Seems innocent, but his morning routine was one of the most dangerous things he could ever do. His ranch was in bear territory, but for 5 decades, Nic was not harmed. No sight of bears, nothing. However, one fateful morning, as he set out again, he had no idea that this time, his luck was about to run out.
Because it was totally on me. I should have read the signs.
With a cowboy tune in his heart, Nic grabbed his shovel and set for his ranch as his dog skipped happily by his side. It was a beautiful morning, and if he did not have work to do, he would admire the sunrise and take it all in. But Nic was a disciplined man. He cared a whole lot about his ranch and what it represents for him. But that morning, the ranch did not care much for him, because in just a few minutes, Nic would be in a fight for his life. As he worked, he suddenly heard his dog barking like crazy.
I heard my dog in a terrible fight, just literally screaming.
He yelled at the dog to stop so he could focus on work, but the dog did not seem to listen. The barking and dog screaming intensified, so Nic finally dropped his shovel in frustration and ran to check what was happening. His best guess was that his dog was in one of its epic fights with a raccoon, rabbit, or some other small animal. Wouldn't be the first time. But Nic had never been more wrong in his life. He sprinted round the corner about 25 yards away and froze to death in shock when he saw what all the fuss was about.
It was a sow with 2 little cubs. Within 2.5 seconds, she was on me.
In the mind of the female bear, Nic was a threat, and she would do anything to protect her 2 little cubs. And before Nic could react, the bear had knocked him down. He was defenseless, but not really. All that Nic had was a shovel, and he intended to use it as a weapon. With all his might, he swung the shovel at the bear and made contact. But the bear was not fazed. It continued its assault with more ferocity. Almost as though the bear was angry that Nic dared to swing at her, she reached closer to him, and with her claws and sharp teeth, she delivered a wound that would do some serious damage.
Dissuaded her, and she reached up and basically removed the center of my face.
The pain was excruciating, and Nic tried to scream for help. But sadly, there was no one around to hear him or do anything about it. It was him versus the bear, and it was barely a fair fight. But this is where it gets more tragic. After tearing off the flesh at the center of his face, Nic tried to stand and get a wind of himself. The adrenaline was pumping, and he knew there was no one else to help him. If he did not do something, the bear would end his life. But alas, the bear was too fast and too powerful. She knocked him down again, and the attack continued. This time, the bear decided to change locations a bit, so she grabbed Nic's knee and began to drag him effortlessly. Nic tried screaming for help again. He tried kicking and trying to free himself from the bear's grip, but again, the bear was way too strong. Finally, 20 yards away from where she first knocked him down, the bear stopped dragging and descended on him again.
And she grabbed my left knee and dragged me about 20 feet. She just worked me over for...
By this time, Nic was bleeding terribly from his face and arms. He had sustained terrible bruises from the bear's claws and teeth, and even from the dragging. But if you think the worst was over, think again. As soon as the bear stopped dragging him, it began to pound on him again. Its only intent was to end his life forever. Nic was sorely defenseless. He was weak now. He barely even had the voice to scream. All that he could do was hope and pray he would live to see another sunrise. So he lay on the ground, trying to be still and cover his vital organs as the bear began to claw away at his face, arms, and thighs. Its sharp claws dug into Nic's skin and caused a fresh pool of blood to flow from his body. The bear was ruthless, and Nic was powerless. After about 30 seconds, the bear finally stopped and walked the other way, away from Nic. It was over. He barely had the strength to think at this point, and he wanted to try and call for help again, but he was in too much pain to even yell. Then he remembered his cell phone. It was in his pocket. There was usually no reception this deep into the ranch, and the phone could have been damaged as a result of the attack, but Nic had no other options. He had to try. So, with great difficulty, he reached into his pocket and tried to see if his cell phone could save him. But what happened next, he did not see coming.
I was trying to get my cell phone to work, and as I was doing that, I could hear her coming back.
All he could hear was huffing and puffing headed in his direction, and he knew the bear was coming back. Apparently, she had inadvertently run off in the opposite direction from where her cubs were, and she was coming back to get them. Sadly, Nic was in the way.
So she came tearing down the hill again. I could hear her huffing and puffing, and she tied into me again, but I was really prepared that time, and that time she just kind of bit my scalp and tried to claw through my...
As soon as she reached him, she tore into his scalp with her claws and reached for his back. Then she began scratching and clawing her way through his skin in the most vicious way imaginable. At this point, Nic was very sure he was not going to make it. What were the odds that he could survive a bear attack twice within 2 minutes? Amidst all the pain, Nic screamed and yelled. There was blood everywhere, and he knew he could not survive for much longer. Then, the most incredible thing happened. The bear suddenly stopped midway through the attack and wandered away, just like that. Nic could not believe it. He lay still for a while, hoping this was not some sort of trick to see if he was dead, and the bear was actually waiting nearby to see if he would move. But even after a few minutes, the bear still was nowhere in sight. Now, he had to change locations, just in case.
I laid there for a few more seconds and then I decided I better change locations. So I got up and walked home.
It was a bold move, a move of sheer willpower and determination. Nic began the long walk back home, still in pain and blooded. At this point, he was at the brink of passing out, but he knew he could not pass out here on the ranch. No one would find him in time, and he would likely die here. So he picked himself up and eventually made it home, slowly but steadily. As soon as he got home, he called the ambulance, and as soon as he got in, he passed out from the blood loss. Thankfully, Nic Patrick woke up a few hours later at the Denver hospital. His face had to be rebuilt, and it took nearly 60 different stitches to close up all his other wounds. But Nic is surprisingly taking all this well. He says he's lucky to still be alive, and he makes sure to mention that the bear was simply doing her job as a mother, protecting her cubs, and he should have known better than to be in her territory. Sadly, he had to learn this lesson the hardest way, and has the scars on his face to remind him in case he ever forgets again. If you think this story was exhilarating, check out this next one.